Everybody, welcome into Sports Talk Chicago. So great to have all of you here with us. We are back and we're ready for tons of Bears, Bulls, Cubs, and White Sox talk here tonight. It's going to be a very fun and a variety type show, and we're glad to be here with you. My name's Jon Zaghloul. John Meadows is directing and producing. I want to give a big shout out and hello to all of our great TV and radio affiliates across Illinois and Indiana. WROK, our newest one in Rockford, 101.1 Peoria Sports Radio, 98.3 The Life, WKAN, 105.5 The Ticket, ACTV, Jet TV, WJOB, and Cities 92.9 Talk FM. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you can comment and subscribe on YouTube at Sports Talk Chicago. Also follow us all over on social at Sports Talk Chicago as well. First two segments of today's program are going to be with my good friend here on today's show. He's covered Chicago sports for 40-plus years. He is the author of Tell Me a Story I Don't Know and the former podcast host of the podcast Tell Me a Story I Don't Know. Please welcome George Ofman to the program. George, it's always great to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for being here. We have so much to discuss, so I'm happy you're going to be here with us for two segments. It seems like there are things going on with every team in Chicagoland, and, coming to you for a lot of this information and your expertise covering all these teams over the past 40 years. I did want to start with the Bears. What was your reaction to the Justin Fields trade?
Well, it was bound to happen. It just took so long that, there was a time where I was considering getting fitted for a straitjacket. They just didn't have my size. It was just unbelievable, right? The thing was stringing along. And what was most interesting about all of it, look at the amount of quarterbacks that changed teams. I think it's historic. I don't think there's ever been that much rollover of quarterbacks, different teams. And you were getting to second-string guys and third-string guys. And here's Justin Fields. He's still with the Bears. But eventually, they sent him to a team he wanted to be at, and they only got a sixth-round pick. But the bottom line is he couldn't stay. There was no way that was going to happen. So now that that's out of the way, then you get to the Caleb Williams talk and more Caleb Williams, and it seems like a fait accompli that in 3+ weeks from now, he will be the Bears' new quarterback. I guess he was in town for dinner last night and had a meeting with the Bears today.
Did you think it was the right move from the Bears front office perspective to move on from Justin Fields and hopefully draft Caleb Williams?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there was any doubt that that's exactly what they were going to do. He has limitations. Justin Fields is a wonderful athlete. He's in a very exciting type of quarterback, but he's really not a very accurate thrower. And they were looking for that kind of guy, and they believe that Caleb Williams is that guy. And the consensus among the experts in, college football and pro football is that he is the best out there, albeit there are others who are pushing the door. And one of those is J.J. McCarthy, who I really believe is going to wind up being a terrific quarterback for whomever he is going to play for. But I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to be Caleb Williams.
How much of a game changer do you think he's going to be? I mean, with all of this hype surrounding him, you'd have to think that year one he's going to make a big step or a big impact in the NFL.
Well, there's two things about that. I did a little research a while back to look at the quarterbacks taken in the first round of the NFL draft. There were 69 of them taken in the first round of the draft. And this is not just the first pick, but just 69 in the first round. So I looked at numbers and determined how many of them were either very good or great in their first year. And that total was just 13 or 19%. Two of them included Jameis Winston, who's still in the league and still probably going to be throwing interceptions for whomever he signed with, because I know he moved teams. RJ3 was another guy who I saw on that list. He had a great first year. So it's not a fait accompli that he is going to just step in there like C.J. Stroud did last year, kind of the anomaly, having a spectacular year for Houston. But Williams is also stepping into a very rare situation. He's not stepping into a team that won 2 games or 3 games. He's stepping into a team that won 7, where the arrow is pointing up, where they just added another top-flight receiver. And so when it comes to this draft, I think that they really have to be very careful with whatever they do with the 9th pick, whether they trade it, whether they keep it, but they really still have to build in the trenches. And you want to make sure that you protect this quarterback, but he's coming into a very comfortable situation. But for them to be a, say, 10-win team in a division that has the Detroit Lions, who are a Super Bowl contender, and possibly the same thing with the Green Bay Packers, and who knows if the Minnesota Vikings pick a quarterback, might be the best division in football suddenly. So, but the bottom line is Ryan Poles has done a really, really good job now building this team. So it's going to be interesting to see now what he does besides Caleb Williams, because I guess they only have, 3 picks after that. And one of them, of course, is the 9th pick for now.
George Ofman here with us on Sports Talk Chicago, 40-plus year sports media veteran and the author of Tell Me a Story I Don't Know. George, in terms of Caleb Williams, I read last week on Twitter that this is going to be the first time, if the Bears choose him, which they should, that a rookie quarterback will be starting off his career with 2 receivers who topped 1,200 yards on the same team the year before. Yeah. So you talk about ready-made situations, that's certainly something to be considered.
Oh, without a doubt. And on top of that, if they decide to go for another wide receiver with the 9th pick, which is possible, though there are some really good receivers in this draft lower, I would really think that they might be better off either getting another pass rusher or somebody to be on that offensive line to help Williams. Yes, he is stepping into a very unique situation, which is why a lot of people say, well, why didn't you keep Justin Fields? The problem is he's just not a very accurate passer. Williams is. And so I think that, listen, the onus is going to be on him anyhow. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to be really good. If he's average in the first year, that might be good enough for them to win 10 games. If he's great, who knows? He may make mistakes. Like I said, there's a paucity of quarterbacks who've been very successful, first-round picks that have been really good in their first year. But he's got all the moxie. He's got a lot of talent. He's a little smallish at 6'1", but we'll see. Obviously, if so many people believe he's the consensus number 1, and I believe the Bears think he's the number 1 quarterback, it's finally time for the Bears to find that elusive, and we are talking about very elusive franchise quarterback.
What do you think the expectation should be for him, realistically speaking? Because I've seen Bears fans say, well, we got rid of Justin Fields, so that means we need to see a 4,000-yard season and a superstar year from Caleb Williams in his rookie year. I think we have to remember he is still going to be a rookie, and there could be growing pains, which should be expected from somebody making that jump from college to the pros.
Absolutely. Like I said, how many C.J. Strouds do you see in the league? That doesn't happen very often. Patrick Mahomes sat. I don't think anybody knew Patrick Mahomes was going to be what he was. They knew they was going to be good, but not this good. There was no way in the world they did. And sometimes there are quarterbacks that are chosen that nobody thinks are going to be good, like Mr. Irrelevant last year, who wound up taking the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl. That's a rarity, to say the least. So, I mean, the expectations are going to be very high. The pressure on him, particularly from the fandom, is going to be very high. So I can't sit here and tell you numbers, John. I can't sit here and say, look, he's not going to rush for 1,000 yards, okay? He's not going to do that. He's actually, as he said, he doesn't like running. He runs when he has to. He's a passer. I think that's what the Bears are most interested in. If he needs to run, he's proven that he can run. But yes, he's going to have at least 2 very good wide receivers to throw to. And what's most important is that he has the time to throw to them. Part of the reason that Justin Fields got sacked so often, and people sometimes say they malign the Bears' offensive line, but part of the reason that he was sacked so often is he held onto the ball so long. I believe last year, again, he was last in holding the ball, 3.7 seconds or something. That's going to get you sacked. No matter what you can do, that's going to get you sacked. So in this case, and Williams, by the way, also tends to hold the ball long. So he's going to have to learn quickly. And now, listen, it's going to be very competitive. I think the Bears have they have the last place schedule, but they're playing, I think it's the AFC South, if I'm not mistaken. But you've got the Lions and the Packers, and they're both really, really good teams. It's going to be very, very competitive for him.
What's your expectation for this Bears team in 2024? Are you at minimum expecting 10 wins, a playoff appearance, anything more? Well, what are you thinking?
Well, first of all, I want to see what they do in the draft and whether or not they pick up some other players. But certainly they're going to be, they were on an up. And you could see with Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator, which he is still basically going to be, and adding Sweat last year adding him was a tremendous boon. They need another player like him. So it all depends on what they do. I mean, there could be expectations of winning 10 games. Could they be a playoff team? That's possible. Again, you're in a very, very competitive division. I'm not going to put a number on them. I'm just going to say there's a good chance that they can win 10 games. I just want to see what they do in the draft.
What's your take on the Bears Stadium situation, too? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you on that.
That's so stupid. Honest to goodness. Did you see what the people did in Kansas City? They voted no, we're not going to spend tax money on refurbishing Arrowhead and building a new stadium for the Royals. Well, here the politics are very different. The very idea that the Bears are now they put almost Arlington Heights in the background, despite the fact that they spent how much money to tear down Arlington Park to make that their new home. And now what they want to do, to me, that's pie in the sky. Even if they are committing $2 billion to a building they still will not own, the city of Chicago will own it. They're talking about tearing down Soldier Field, keeping the columns. This is the place, the spaceship that was built only 20 years ago. They're still paying it off, and now they want to tear that down and build a dome stadium downtown. I'm sorry, I just don't see how that's going to work. And as a taxpayer, I certainly wouldn't want to put a penny into that. Same thing with the White Sox. I think it's pie in the sky, but listen, if they can pull the wool over the mayor's eyes, that's one thing. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to do that with the governor.
And I thought Arlington Heights was going to be the best situation for them.
Yes.
There were people who were not happy that they wouldn't be in Chicago anymore, but it's accessible. You have 200 acres of land. You could build a whole experience, not just a stadium out there. I thought that would have been the best choice.
John, they're only playing how many games? Right. They're playing either 8 or 9 home games and a couple of preseason games. You're not the baseball team playing 81 games. So you can go to Arlington Heights, which at least the infrastructure is better. Imagine what they have to do here. They not only have to change the infrastructure, they're talking about, what is it, putting a bridge and putting part of, was it Lakeshore Drive or Columbus Drive below ground or something? Come on, seriously. It's utopian to me. To me, it's idiotic. And I've always said and contend they're going to still wind up in Arlington Heights. And until further notice, that's where I think they're going to eventually wind up.
George Ofman, author of Tell Me a Story I Don't Know, 40-plus year Chicago sports media veteran, is here with us on Sports Talk Chicago. I'm Jon Zaghloul. John Meadows here directing and producing. Going to continue to talk about the Bears here, George. So the stadium stuff, we'll see how that ends up going, I guess. What's been your evaluation and take on Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and their sort of partnership now as they enter another season together?
Well, it started to come together last year, albeit it was a very strange year, which you know very well when you reported on the defensive coordinator and what happened to him. And then, the offensive coordinator as well. But then suddenly, when they got Montez Sweat, the defense played so much better. And they started to win some games. And there were some really good moves made by Ryan Poles. The best of which, of course, now is adding the wide receiver from the Chargers. So that's basically saying we want to take a giant step forward with him, with Caleb Williams. And again, whatever they do with it, they've got 2 picks in the top 10 of this draft. It's going to be very interesting whether or not he wants to trade down and get some more picks. It's a weak draft. It's a strong draft for quarterbacks, a strong draft for wide receivers, but it's a fairly weak draft as I've been reading. So I think he's done a good job. A lot of people don't like Matt Eberflus. For what reason, I don't know. It takes time when you have a teardown of a franchise, and then you have to move away from the quarterback that you had. But they certainly are primed to be a better team. Their arrow is pointing up. whereas the White Sox arrow is actually still pointing down, which is amazing for a team that won only 61 games last year. So I'm impressed with some of the things that he's done, some of the draft picks from the last year. He's certainly upgraded the defense, but they definitely need another presence, on that defensive line, another pass rusher. And like I said, you build the trenches and you can protect Caleb Williams. So once again, I think this is still going to wind up being a very interesting draft, albeit with just at the moment 4 picks.
I would say, too, that in terms of Ryan Poles, the only 2 misses that I could think of off the top of my head are Chase Claypool, obviously.
Absolutely.
And maybe Bayless Jones Jr. But other than that, to his credit, I think he's been very shrewd and smart in the moves that he's made.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Claypool was a giant mistake. But you know what? GMs will make mistakes, but if they can correct those mistakes, which clearly he's done, DJ Moore turned out to be a terrific receiver, and now they have a dual threat. And if they decide to take one of the receivers, if they're available, no one knows if they're going to be available, because you know that the recent acquisition is only going to be here for 1 year likely. So they've got the opportunity to do that. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it because it looks finally like the Bears are moving in the right direction.